So it's not as if I had, a normal life, then was abused, and then that was the trauma. It's much more complex than that. Now, one of the things here is that a father that's absent a great deal of the time. My mother had two more children, so there were 9 children. And in the space of 12 years, she had 9 children. My father absent a lot. My mother struggling with raising kids on her own. October 1958, he was sawing some wood on one of these great big tractor-driven massive saws, and it hit. There was a piece of steel in the wood, and it hit it, and it rammed it into his leg, and he had a great bruise, and went into the hospital, and they diagnosed leukemia. He was 39 years old, and he died the next year, 6 months later. The parish put out a call and said to all the farmers, it's a small town, so a lot of farm community, quite a farm community, to come and help us. And so they had a farming bee one Sunday, beautiful day, and 50, 100 people came out, tractors and everything out. They went through the whole farm, cultivated everything, sprayed it, big meal. And that's when I first became aware, really, of Father Harper. He's the young priest. He's 30 years old, and he was very kind to me, and brought me a Coke, and so I was quite touched. I was hungry, really hungry for father attention, because I had little, and nothing with my mother. And that's when it started. He started grooming me, and my mother invited it. My boys are lacking a father, or missing a father, and so the grooming was. He got me into altar boys. I did the training, and would come and pick me up and take me for rides around the country. There was one place, especially in this little town of Port Burwell, where they had one of these hot dog stands, and they made foot-long hot dogs, and that was an amazing treat. And so rides like that, and then learning to drive his car. He'd get me between his legs. He'd be in the driver's seat, get me between his legs, get my legs positioned on the pedals, and to me, wonderful. Personal attention. And then in the confessional, Harper would ask me questions. He started asking me questions about my body and changes in my body, and then we'd be out in his car, and he would bring out a book of anatomy, and show me. And it was he was teaching me about anatomy and genitalia and all this and that, and then at one point he asked me to show him my penis, and I'm uncircumcised, but I hadn't pulled the foreskin back, and I didn't know you could. And he said, hygiene, it's good, and pull it back and wash. And so in some ways, like a father would do that. And then he... but every time I saw him, it would be questions about my body, about hygiene, about feelings, what I was feeling. Was I touching myself? And I wasn't. I hadn't hit puberty, and so it was pretty innocent at that point. But then he took me to his parents' place in Windsor, Ontario, to stay overnight. And it was a big thrill for me. But I slept in the same bed as him. And then he asked me to take off my pajama bottoms. And he took off his, and then he had me feel his penis, hold his penis, which was erect. And he said, this is what an adult, this is what you're going to grow into. This is still sort of teaching me. But he was fondling me. And then after a while, he would get up and go to the bathroom, and I would fall asleep. And that happened several times, more or less the same thing. And then I started coming into puberty. I started having sexual feelings, and he would ask me about that, and he was really, it's always in the confessional. It was, and then he would call me under the auspices of needing to set up my assisting at Mass schedule, but then on the phone also questions about, and he was really concerned about me fondling myself or masturbating, and so intimate, detailed questions, and so it became an interrogation. So he took me to Kentucky, me and my older brother, to stay with a family that had moved from Aylmer to Kentucky. Good Catholic family. And got it all arranged, and I slept with him in a bedroom. My brother Tony was sleeping out on a couch in the living room. And same thing again. Holding his penis, him holding my penis. And I'd had sexual feelings had been developing in me, and I didn't quite know what they were. And I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's masturbating me, and I'm close to orgasm. And then I just moved a little bit, and I had an orgasm, and then went to sleep. And it was the first orgasm. And then in the morning, he said, before we go to breakfast, I need you to, what you did last night was really wrong. And you need to make your confession to me. So he had me confess his abuse of me to him as a sin. And that's what I have told, that's the mind fuck that just couldn't. And then it became, and in the confessional afterwards, because it was always, he was my confessor, so every week I would have to confess to him. And it became more intensive, I think, from him.